Today is a very sad day. A day that many of us knew would come, but is certainly no less dreadful now that it's here. The day on which we pay tribute and bid farewell to Bill Spier, Yosef ben Pinchas Berezel, a man of great accomplishment, who endured much adversity to lead a life of deep Jewish commitment, vision, generosity, and above all, dedication to his family. Beloved husband of Radine, his true partner and Azer, devoted father and grandfather to Jonathan, together with Susie, Evan, together with Malka and their children, Eva Rose and Atara, Debbie, together with Bruce, together with Zev, Benjamin, and Rosie, Rosie, together with Ami and their children, Kayla, Maish, Eliana, and Kobe, and David and Daniela and their children, Sammy, Jacob, and Isaac. We'll begin with two Mizmorim of Tehillim. I'll recite Mizmor Kuf Chav Ches, Psalm 128, followed by Rabbi Zev Reichman of the East Hill Synagogue. Shir Amalos, Ashrei Kol Yirei Adonai, HaHolech B'drachav, Yegiya Kapecha Ki Sochel, Ashrecha V'tov Lach, Eshtecha Ki Gefen Poria, B'yarkesei Veisecha, Bonecha Kishsilei Zeisim, Saviv L'Shulchanecha, Hinei Ki Chen Yevorach Gover, Yirei Adonai, Yivarechecha Adonai Mitzion, Urei Betuv Yerushalayim, Kol Yemei Chayecha, Urei Vanim Levanecha, Shalom Al Yisrael.
Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi yagur ba'ahalecha, mi yishkon b'har kadshecha. Holech tamim ufoel tzedek, v'dover emes bilvavo. Lo ragal al l'shono, lo asa l're'ehu ra'ah, v'cherpa, lo nasal krovo. Nivze be'inav nim'as, v'es yirei Adonai yechabed, Nishbala harav lo yamir, kaspo lo nasan b'neshech b'shochad, al naki lo lakach, hosei ele lo yimot le'olam.
We'll now hear tributes in the following order from members of the family: Jonathan, Debbie, Evan, Raz, and David, followed by Zev, representing all the 11 grandchildren, and concluding with Rabbi Yossi Levine, Rabbi of the Jewish Center in Manhattan.
It's been about 24 years since I've done this, so bear with me. What a life. What a life. From that 4-year-old little boy who walked the streets in Germany with his mother during Kristallnacht, to coming to America with that mother, Rosie Spier of blessed memory, escaping the horrors of the Nazis. From living in an orphanage until his mother was able to save enough money, working as an aide for a wealthy family in Manhattan, to finally being able to live together in their own apartment in Washington Heights. And then, years later, purchasing an apartment in that very same building where his mother worked. From rising from the mailroom to a seat in the boardroom of a prominent American public company, from having literally nothing to dedicating his life to charity, to help those less fortunate, from having narrowly escaped being extinguished by the Nazis, to leaving a legacy of 5 children and 11 grandchildren. What a life. What an amazing life. My father had a drive and spirit that likely came from the hardships he endured and overcame as a child. I've always been amazed how someone who was raised without a father, without much else besides a strong, loving mother, could achieve such success and high regard from peers and friends around the world. Starting out delivering company mail to heading up that company's Tokyo office at only 27 years of age, and then returning to America to rise to its highest ranks at such a young age is beyond amazing. While I always admired his achievements and his incredible Horatio Alger story, it was his Menschlichkeit and the respect he garnered from all he encountered that I am most proud of. Though he had pain and tragedy growing up, he was always there as an example of how to conduct oneself with honor, dignity, with the highest of principles, and to support charitable causes and those less fortunate. Loyalty, honesty, and tradition were important to him. His devotion to friendships, evidenced by his lifelong connection to all his childhood friends from Washington Heights, the Yekis, friends who were like family members throughout my life. Our father spoke more through action than voice, and I'd like to think that all his children and grandchildren benefited by this example. My fondest memories growing up were as a child in Riverdale, him teaching us sports, playing basketball in the backyard, tennis after shul at the Horace Mann courts, and attending all our basketball games, cheering us on, with our dog Inky barking along for support. Sports, both playing and watching, were always a big part of his life. As a child, his mother looked the other way as he snuck out to play baseball after shul. For us growing up, watching ABC Wild World of Sports every Saturday after lunch was a ritual. It wasn't until many years later that I learned that a Shabbos clock was actually no more than a timer plugged into the back of a TV set. I still have fond memories of him sneaking Evan and I into New York Ranger games, slipping a few bucks to the ticket taker at the Garden underneath his ticket, and enjoying the games with Walter, Jerry, and the Newburgers, as he read that day's telexes in between plays. In his later years, he even convinced me to let him play second base on my company's softball team. He was about 70, yet played with the same glee and competitive enthusiasm of that boy from the Washington Heights Police Athletic League team. My employees were quite impressed, and it brought a smile to my face. I recall when I brought Susie with me for the first time to visit he and Radine in the Hamptons. Radine was impressed with Susie pursuing her doctorate in psychology. My father, on the other hand, couldn't stop talking about her tennis game. That alone, in his view, made her a keeper. He was always the cool father with his love of sports and convertible cars, and I loved that. I have a great picture from the 60s where Mom, Evan, Debbie, and I didn't go like this during rehearsal. Where Mom, Evan, Debbie, and I were in the stands watching Dad dominate at the center position in a company basketball game. Of course, that was in Tokyo, where at 5'11", he was the tallest player. But all I cared about how proud I was watching him play. He always had the coolest cars, which certainly, his love for freedom and convertibles and sports cars certainly had an influence on me. Way before Tom Cruise and Risky Business, I used to love it that he entrusted me as a teenager to drive his black Porsche 928 whenever he was away on business. I eventually bought that same car when I could afford to, as an homage to that time. In the 90s, I built him a replica of a 1930s Auburn Roadster convertible, which he enjoyed driving around the Hamptons with Rosie and David, only to later continue that joy 30 years afterwards, driving Rosie and David's children along those same roads. As I got older, he was always excited to see whatever recent classic car I purchased, and I was equally excited to share that enthusiasm with him by taking him for a ride. Tennis was his passion. In the days of wooden rackets, all-white clothing, and white tennis balls, he played with a vigor and love for the game that he taught all of us. How he was able to play with a cigarette in his hand back then was truly a unique skill. And of course, his story of playing with the Japanese emperor was one that he relished telling throughout his life. I think his grandchildren have heard that story a time or two. Who would have thunk it, a poor immigrant Jewish boy ending up playing tennis with the Emperor of Japan? What a life, what a life. Continuing his Jewish faith and traditions was very important to him. I vividly remember how proud and excited he was for my bar mitzvah, helping me rehearse over and over the night before, even by candlelight when the power went out. He was actually more nervous than me. He supported so many Jewish causes, and with my mother, of blessed memory, was very involved in the formation of SAR Jewish Day School, where Evan, Debbie, and I attended, and many years later, his grandchildren as well. More recently, he and Radine helped support the foundation and growth of the Boca Jewish Center in Florida, which is now flourishing under the guidance of the amazing Rabbi Gibber, whom they recruited to move to Florida as its spiritual leader. When we were young, he traveled a lot for business, but always brought home something from whatever country or business he visited. Toblerone white chocolates was a favorite and were quickly consumed by Evan, Debbie, and I. The cases of Alcoa aluminum foil, however, lasted a lot longer. While he worked long hours and traveled a lot, Shabbos was always a special time for us growing up in Riverdale as a family. Walking to shul together to Riverdale Jewish Center and the wonderful friendships we had with all those other young families back then. Those were incredibly special, innocent times. It was an idyllic life. I'm forever grateful to he and my mother for providing us with those memories that I will cherish forever. My father was blessed to have two special women in his life. First, of course, our mother of blessed memory, Toby, with whom he spent his earlier life with, and together raised Evan, Debbie, and I. We moved to Tokyo in 1961 and spent 5 years there, where Evan and Debbie were born. Our mother was a teacher who quickly adopted to life as a modern Orthodox Jew in post-war Japan, while my father mastered the art of distinguishing the difference between yes and yes in dealing with Japanese businessmen. His sharp negotiating skills were on display when he successfully convinced the Japanese government to allow a Moel to enter the country just in time for Evan's bris. Definitely a first for Japan. He took his Japanese language skills back to America, often employing it when ordering in Japanese restaurants, despite the fact that the waiters were usually Korean and had absolutely no idea what he was saying. And then, of course, Radine, who fulfilled his later life and gave him two additional children, Rosie and David, whom he was so proud of. Meeting Radine and the rest of the wonderful Abramson family enriched his life, and I love them all for bringing him that happiness. I still vividly remember meeting Uncle Ellis for the first time, unfolding himself from the diminutive back seat of my father's Porsche 911. He was a fixture in that back seat, accompanying my father and Radine wherever they went. While my father wasn't pleased when they traded in that car for a more practical Lincoln Town Car, I assume Ellis and his back were rather thankful. Radine's devotion to our father was boundless, staying by his side constantly until his final moments. I know I speak for all his children when I say thank you, Radine, and how so grateful we are that you were in his life. Especially with our mother becoming ill at such a young age, I always looked up to my father as my rock and hero, always excited to see him. Daddy, as we called him back then, was loved and admired by so many for everything he accomplished, his humble character, his ethics, and his tremendous dedication to philanthropy. While our family experienced tragedy, I always knew he was there for us. Though in typical German form, we never expressed ourselves emotionally, I always felt an enduring connection and devotion. I was driven to repay that dedication by trying to make him feel proud of me. While he was never demonstrative with his emotions, I think all of us knew how much he loved us and how proud he was of all his children and grandchildren, each unique and imbued with the values he instilled in us. This past year has been hard. While his short-term memory had been waning for a number of years, his body was strong and he continued to play golf. His new love after tennis became challenging. He played often up until the last few months, even getting Radine to learn the sport so that they could always be together. At 86, he lived a long and full life, but I selfishly always hoped for more. More time to talk about business, play golf, and enjoy his ever-growing family. More time for him to be there when Susie and I get married. More time to tell him how much I loved him and how much I admired him. But Hashem felt it was time for him to join the family and friends who passed before him and to rest in eternity within the comfort of their spirit. Dad, you always had a quiet strength and dignity that I always admired and strove to live up to. People have been telling me what a legend and icon my father was. He truly was all that and more, but for me, he was just my dad. Dad, for 60 years, I was so proud to be your son, and I wished it was said more between us, but I love you so much, and I will miss you the rest of my life. What an amazing life. Okay.
As Malka, Eva, and I took a walk yesterday through Fieldston, the neighborhood I grew up in, flashes of memories came up as we passed by my childhood home. I showed them my old bedroom and the renovations that have since been done on the house. And also, I've showed them where Inky jumped about 60 feet to the backyard because he was locked up in a bathroom and he wanted to get out. Every summer, when Jonathan, Debbie, and I returned from camp, Dad would play basketball with us in our backyard. He was always so excited to see what skills we learned from camp and took pride in watching us grow. As we continued our walk, we passed the football field at Horace Mann. I remembered the many Shabbos afternoons that Dad took us to watch the football games. I always loved being able to connect to him through sports, and it was a bond we shared throughout my life. Whether it was through golf, tennis, or going to Ranger games together. In my teenage years, Dad was a part owner of the Brooklyn Nets. At the time, they were called the New Jersey Nets. He took us to practices, and we got to sit in the owner's box. All my friends were jealous. I had the coolest dad. Sports brought us together in many ways. Dad taught me what it meant to show good sportsmanship, and I tried to embody their value both on and off the court. Not only did he show good sportsmanship in athletics, he also wove this value into his business ethics. My dad led by example, showing me what it meant to be humble in business. While he entered his dealings with a set goal in mind, he always treated his colleagues with the utmost respect. Our walk through Riverdale was particularly sentimental this Shabbos, as I recalled my early childhood memories of him. Riverdale was a very important part of his life, and living in the community now, I always feel connected to him whenever I walk through Fieldston. As Dad recognized that he was blessed in his professional life, he remembered his humble beginnings and made sure to always give back. My father and my mother helped establish the foundation of what is now a thriving Jewish community by being significant supporters of the RJC and founding members of SAR. They were keenly aware of the importance of strong schools and shuls as the building blocks of a successful Jewish community. It was these guiding principles that Dad instilled in me that many years later ensured that my children received a strong Jewish education. In fact, it is a great source of pride that my children received the same SAR education that I did, even at the expense of many years of dreadful Tappan Zee Bridge traffic. Whether it was through sports, business, or philanthropy, I've learned so much from my father and continue to learn from him daily. I love you, Dad, and will miss you a lot.
When sitting down last night, let me take my mask off. When sitting down last night to write this, I just didn't know where to start. As we are a large family and to ensure a Yeki timely service, I did not want to waste any words. Growing up, my dad made me feel like a daddy's girl. He always made me feel special, no matter what was going on. At the Concord Hotel, he would always bring me back to the hotel room chocolate milk from the late night tea room. When wanting to be included in an adult simcha, he actually called the host to see if he could pay for me so I could attend, and was not embarrassed to do so, as he simply wanted me to be happy. On a special business conference in Puerto Rico, I was around 14 years old. We went on a shopping spree, me and my father, in the hotel gift shop, buying mature dresses and jewelry so I would look 18, enabling me to join an 18-year-old and up casino night. He invested in a documentary, knowing that I was studying film, which secured me an internship and a trip to the Academy Awards. My father, Radine, and myself had a very intimate post-private party of 3. He taught me how to play tennis on the Horace Mann tennis courts, ski in Switzerland and Colorado, and drive on the West Side Highway. Most of all, he taught me how to be strong, no matter what life brings you. Family, morality, Jewish continuity, chesed, and kindness was paramount. During my mother's illness, my father took care of all of us, ensuring we had everything we needed. He brought Radine into my life and beautifully expanded our family into 7. Radine and my father created a huge, strong rock together, always there for me. Jonathan, Evan, Razi, and David, in every way, and incredible role models for Bruce, Zeb, Benjamin, and Rosie. During the height of COVID, when my business was put on hold, even through struggling with dementia, he passionately conveyed a message via Zoom that he and Radine are always here for me. It really just took me away that he found the words and emotions through his dementia struggles of communication. My dad would never have wanted to live the way he did the past few months. However, the ugliness of dementia brought out beauty, strength, and unity in members of my family and extended family, from young to old, that I have never seen before, and for that I am forever grateful. I want to take this opportunity to personally and publicly thank Radine, who not only brought out the best in my father, but took care of him during the good times and the tremendously challenging times, always with kindness, love, respect, patience, and dignity. Thank you, Dad, for teaching me and my family that actions are what define you and making me who I am today. I miss you already and love you very much.
Last night, as we were preparing for today, my mother turned to me and asked rhetorically, how could it be that a spouse doesn't get to mourn for the entire year the way a child does? It gave me pause to in fact question why it is that this extra stage of mourning is only taken on by a child for their parent. What I learned is that our stages tell us that psychologically and spiritually, our connection to our parents is the most essential relationship that defines who we are as a people. And thus, children require a longer period of adjustment. As children, no matter at what stage of life, we spend most of our lives in taking mode, and our parents are constantly in giving mode. It is hard to say thank you when you are always in a taking perspective, and so this period of time is meant to guide us into a deep state of gratitude for all that they gave and for all that they did. In a relationship where it is most difficult to show gratitude, this long period of time helps us focus on recognizing the good that our parents desperately tried to give in the best way that they could. My father gave so much good. My father and I had the most special bond. He lovingly called me Razi, Razbaz, Pazi, and would exclaim it in such a vivacious manner. My dad may have been older than those of my peers, but at every stage of life, he could rival their energy and certainly beat them in any game of sports. I will forever cherish my incredible childhood memories, including Sundays spent going for long rides in the child seat of his bike, or ice skating in Wallman Rink, the many winters we spent racing down ski slopes together. Of course, he was always way ahead of me, teaching me how to drive like a real New Yorker and how to best respond to speeding tickets. Outings to the circus, sporting events, his favorite Thanksgiving balloons, and so much more that I'm just too blurry to recall right now. As well as recent memories of his yearly trips to LA, his numerous calls to check in just to make sure that I was happy, and that the weather was good. And even though he deeply wanted us to be closer, he always respected and admired Ami and my accomplishments in LA, raising our children and being part of a community. My dad may not have cared about what I was studying in school, but as my high school friends recollected, he never missed one of my volleyball games or softball games. He was so involved. He took such pride in my athleticism and his care into those Yeshiva League games. So much so that he made sure to tell every person that he came across that his daughter was the first to get intentionally walked in the school softball game. And I'm only sharing this because he would have wanted to be sure that you all knew. The Torah teaches us that our parents are God's representatives to us in this world. They represent values and ideals. They are meant to impart in their own unique way essential tools for living. My father reached tremendous heights in his life, both professionally and personally, but he never for a minute forgot that he came from humble beginnings. He was truly the most humble person I knew. When you saw my dad, it was hard to imagine that this man, surrounded by a large, loving family and groups of friends, who retired from an extremely accomplished career, came to this country at the age of 4 with only his mother and the clothes on his back. Yet he never let his adversities get in his way. From a very early age, he acquired the most fantastic, fascinating, fun, loving group of friends who we call the Yekis. Their chevra have become our family, and their 75-plus years of friendship has taught us how important it is to surround yourself with good people in life, that it is the love of friends and family that will get you through life's ups and downs. My father was very Yekish in his ways, and while I may be known for my love of Chassidus, I don't deny that I am proud to also be a true Yeki at heart, sharing so many of his same attributes and principles that my dad had and lived by. If you're not early, you're late, that one's name and reputation is of utmost importance, and that everything happens in its proper time and place. We learn from Pirkei Avos, Emor ma'at ve'aseh harbeh, v'haveh mekabel es kol adam misever panim yafot. Speak little, but do much, and receive all men with a pleasant countenance. This was the epitome of my father. As many know, he came off as very reserved, but it wasn't that he was shy. He had plenty to say and to speak about, but it was just that he knew there was no need for extraneous conversation. If perhaps we got too rowdy at the Shabbos table and maybe started speaking negatively, he would exclaim with such a chuckle, "All right, this conversation is deteriorating, Dean. Let's bench." He had such a unique, wonderful way of having such a great magnetic presence, even while being fairly quiet. He was someone who never had to use his words to say what he was feeling. Of course, Yekis aren't the most emotional of people, yet a simple glance or a small gesture was all you needed to feel his incredible warmth and abundance of love. And he truly had so much love to give. He was such a doting father, doting friend, father, grandfather, uncle, brother, brother-in-law, and late son-in-law. The way he would look around at our entire family when we were together showed what deep gratitude he had for each of us and the nachas that he felt. He loved my cousins and their kids as if they were his own children and grandchildren. And oh, how he loved his grandchildren. While he was able to engage more with his older set of Zev, Benjamin, Eva Rose, and Rosie, he would just sit back in amazement with the younger generation. He got such a kick out of Kayla, Sammy, Mace, Jacob, Eliana, Isaac, and Kobe. He loved all of their rambunctiousness and was always extremely attentive to their shenanigans. It was just a year ago, exactly on this date, that the 6 of them were together in Boca for yeshiva break. You would assume that in his older years, he would want to take a break, take a back seat, take things easy, but it was quite the opposite. He tagged along with us to every farm, zoo, beach, and restaurant outing. In fact, we were the ones that needed to slow down the pace. Baruch Hashem, our children, or as he would call them, the kinder, had such a love for their grandpa. They would share such funny conversations and interactions together. Well, whether it was over our nightly FaceTimes from LA, or while watching them swim in the Hamptons, or trip to the museums in New York City, or the wild golf cart rides in Florida. Ami and I are so grateful that they will forever have these incredibly special, fun-filled memories of their grandpa. And we will strive to continue to instill upon them the many values that he imparted on our own lives. Foremost, the importance of humility, the value of one's reputation, the grave need to be about tzedakah in all aspects of Jewish community life, a strong work ethic and educational foundation, respect for your parents and contemporaries, commitment to family, and lastly, as he would say, to take it easy, don't sweat the small stuff. I've only witnessed my father cry twice in his life. The first was at a yahrzeit commemoration for his mother, Rosie, who I am so blessed to be named for. And the second was at David's offer when he spoke about my mother. I think that these 2 moments are so telling about his deep appreciation for his past, as well as for his present. They were just such an amazing couple that truly complemented each other in the best of ways. My parents both love speeches and the importance of saying a few words no matter the type of event or gathering. So you can only imagine how hard it is for my mother not to be up here and endlessly rave about my father. While they had a bit of an age gap, they were unquestionably two souls united as one in all aspects of life. My dad so admired my mom's involvement in her many organizations. He was so grateful for her flawless capabilities in hosting huge family gatherings throughout the summers on Thanksgiving, Shabbosim, and Yontifs. And he was so in awe of her mothering skills. In the last year, he started calling her my queen, a title she so highly deserves. In turn, my mom was so respectful to my dad for all that he accomplished, provided, and endured in his lifetime. She loved and needed his calm, cheerful, fun personality, and she relished in his many skill sets. Together, they accomplished it all. They were admired by everyone for their strong partnership, their unparalleled levels of tzedakah, their incredible midos, and their value of family and friends above all else. As my father heavily declined in the past year, I have never seen or could imagine such intense devotion as that which my mother gave to my father in every step of the way. He loved her like a queen, and she treated him like a king during every new stage. Last Shabbos, they celebrated their 39th wedding anniversary, or as my mother was told by a friend, they have now entered their 40th year together. While it was an extremely difficult past few weeks, it was on the eve of their anniversary that he miraculously was able to be by her side in full clarity and composure. The smile and the laughter that they shared for those few minutes was the most intense level of love that exists. Mom and Dad, you have set a very high bar for the rest of us. And Ami and I could only daven and strive to have that beautiful level of marriage. I want to conclude with tremendous gratitude and thanks to the many incredible people in our lives. A big thank you to all of you, our friends, rabbis, extended family, and communities from New York City, Inglewood, the Hamptons, Florida, California, Europe, and Israel that have shown an outpouring of beautiful messages, love, and support. I want to thank the incredible caring nursing staff, as well as Patchy and Jermaine, who went above and beyond for our family and father. To my dearest family, my in-laws and David's in-laws, and John Louise and Uncle Renee in Switzerland. And to Lean and Uncle Ellis and their children, Jason, Michael, and Taya. There are not enough words to describe their extremely close relationship, the love that they all shared, and the care that they displayed. To my children and incredible husband, Ami, for this past week apart, for the level of reverence that he gave my father. And of course, to my siblings and to their families for the 24/7 level of care that you exhibited and the obstacles that you faced, and yet the intense devotion and love that you displayed knows no bounds. As we are now in the beginning of a new Jewish month, there is a beautiful acronym attributed to its name, Shvat, Shenishma Besoros Tovo, that we should be blessed to hear good tidings, and I pray that from now on, we only share simchas together and in person very soon. And I know that this isn't Yeki-esque, but Daddy, I love you so very much. I'm so glad that you're at rest, and we will miss you forever.
This is a word Daniela yells at me for bottling everything up. Dad, everything that I am, everything that I am today, and everything that I have is because of you. You were my hero, someone that I always strive to be like and emulate. And not because of any one thing you did in your life, but because of everything you did in your life. Your entire life consisted of hard work and sacrifice for the benefit of others. For family, your close friends, and your community. You showed me how wealth and success is not measured by how much you have in life, but rather by how much you give. You were always frugal and calculated when it came to spending on yourself, yet beyond generous and uninhibited when it came to giving to others. If someone was ever in need of anything, whether it be money or even a job, there was never a hesitation. In today's world, you often hear people say, at the end of the day, you need to do what is best for you. That is not how my father lived his life. You resigned from your position as vice chairman of the only company you knew because of your principles. As many of you know, my father left his job at Fibro Salmon because he could not go along with the firing of lower-level employees in order to preserve the salaries of upper-level management. In his resignation letter, he wrote the following: "I'm impelled to stand up and make it clear to all concerned that this was not the way to solve our problems. It is a pity that we time and time again hurt the ones that are closest to us. But I have no difficulty in explaining to my children that at times one does not compromise on principles, even to the sacrifice of a most cherished career. At the end of the day, one has to be able to look oneself in the mirror and live with one's conscience. You were the epitome of consistency. Not once do I ever remember you saying one thing and doing another. Through 33 years of my life, I never saw you take a sip of alcohol, never saw you gamble, and I could probably count on one hand the number of times I ever saw you raise your voice at anyone. Growing up, I got all the benefits of having an older and wiser father, yet none of the downside. You were 20 to 30 years older than all of my friends' parents, yet you had no problem whipping every single one of them in a game of tennis. There are not too many people fortunate enough to call one person their father, business partner, and golfing buddy. After graduating college, you brought me into the office, and I had the honor of going to work with my father for nearly 10 years. Although our investment philosophies differed somewhat, you taught me invaluable life and business lessons. You showed me the importance of never investing in something you are not able to understand, and if something looks too good to be true, it's probably because it is. You taught me that if you're ever going to make an investment mistake, it better be your own, because it's much easier to live with your own mistakes than someone else's. However, one of the greatest business tools and life tools you taught me was how to be a problem solver. You excelled and thrived at finding solutions, whether it be a business issue, a community issue, or even a relationship issue. You always felt there was a way to make something work out, and sometimes that even meant by combining all three of them together. You were the ultimate consumer of knowledge, always reading, always learning, yet never preaching. Benjamin Franklin once said, "Well done is better than well said." And that is exactly how you taught me about life, by showing me how you lived. You grew up as an only child with just a mother, and on several periods of childhood, not even that. You earned every inch of life that you had, and not once over my 33 years of my life did I ever hear you complain about anything or anyone, other than occasionally telling Mom to get off your back. And I can't really blame you for that. Growing up, whenever I would complain about something or somebody, I always remember you telling me, "Who cares about what anyone else is doing? Just worry about what you're doing." As incredibly tough as the last few months and years have been, one thing I will take from all of it is just how much you loved and cared about your family and how much we loved you. One of the most unbelievable things to me is that even upon the final stages of my father's dementia, he knew every single person in his immediate family. He knew their names. He knew exactly who they were. And they were the only people he ever wanted to be around. I hope and pray my boys will remember the precious times that they had together with their grandfather. They truly loved him, and he loved them even more. As years went on, I somehow was replaced in the golfing totem pole. Sammy only wanted to play with Grandpa, and Grandpa only wanted to play with Sammy. It's very likely that it's because they both enjoyed being able to roam free over the golf course with absolutely zero etiquette and without worrying about my critique in the background. As Sammy would often tell me, Grandpa uses 2 balls when he plays golf, so that's how you play golf. At the end of the summer, I told my 2 older boys that we were moving out of our house so that Grandma and Grandpa could live there and be close to us. They didn't complain at the time, and not once over our many visits to our old home did they ever question or complain why they had to leave their house so that Grandma and Grandpa could live there. At a young age, my 2 older boys showed an almost natural understanding of and acceptance of what one must do and sacrifice in life for others and, more importantly, for family. This is your legacy, Dad, or as you would say, your ROI, your return on investment. While this last year was not the easiest of years, all in all, we made it work and gave my father the best send-off that one possibly could have given the circumstances. In order to do so, we made the collective decision as a family that due to my father's health, it was more important for us to be together than to be apart because of COVID. And in hindsight, each one of us did our part to make this past year a relatively special one for my father. After all, there are not too many grandparents that got to spend every last day of the last 9 months completely surrounded by their family. So on that note, I would like to conclude by thanking and acknowledging all the people here that made this past year possible. I'd like to thank my Uncle Ellis and Aunt Colleen and the entire Abramson family for the Mesiras Nefesh over the last year. You all went above and beyond. You were always there for us, and we'll be forever grateful. I have to thank my in-laws for enabling me to fulfill the mitzvah of Kibbutz Avim by welcoming Danielle and I and our 3 well-trained boys into their home with open arms over the last 5 months. As my mother-in-law would say, makom balev yesh makom. And I'm forever grateful for this. It says that one who honors their parents is rewarded with arichas yamim, a long life. Jonathan and Susie, your constant support from afar was felt by all, always checking in to see how both Dad and Mom were doing, and what you could do to help from afar. Razi and Ami, you picked up your lives on multiple occasions, whether spending the summer in COVID isolation with Mom and Dad, or the past few weeks you spent being there for Mom, while Ami was left to man the ship at home by himself. While we know your kids had a blast throughout, we also know this was not an easy task for you guys, by any means. Debbie, Bruce, Zeb, Andrew, and Rosie. As my mom has told me repeatedly, and I mean repeatedly, over the last few months, she could not have done this without you. You never missed a Shabbos, never missed an appointment. You were always a phone call away, and were always there when needed. You should all be blessed with arichas yamim and shanos tovos. Daniela, as I've said to everyone this past year, the only one in this relationship who has truly sacrificed anything over the past year are you and the kids. You sacrificed as a wife and as children so that I could fill my duties as a son. I love you and will always be grateful for being married to the most amazing wife and daughter in the world. Mom, your whole life, you were always by Dad's side, always there to communicate what he was not able to. You were his greatest advocate, his biggest fan, and he was yours. You did the impossible over the last year. You did what almost every medical professional in the field told us would likely be impossible given Dad's condition. You kept him home. You kept him safe, and you kept him happy, while still being there for us as a mother and a grandmother. You're an inspiration to us all on what it means to be a spouse, and what it means to care and love a spouse in sickness and through health. We will all be here by your side through this next journey of life. And as Daniela keeps making sure that I tell you, there is a bedroom waiting for you with your name on it. Whether it be a Shabbos, or even if you need a bit of time until you're fully ready to begin this next chapter of life, we love you. Thank you.
Hello. Grandpa would get a kick out of seeing me up here. As the oldest and wisest grandchild, I was given the honor to speak today on behalf of my grandfather's 11 grandchildren, Benjamin, Eva Rose, Rosie, Kayla, Sammy, Maish, Jacob, Eliana, Isaac, little Kobe, and myself, Zev. Simply put, my grandpa was a legend. His life was like a great movie by Kubrick or Scorsese, except it was actually real life. He escaped Nazi Germany and through self-determination parlayed that single bit of good fortune to rise out of poverty and become a self-made success. He went from the mailroom to the top floor, becoming chairman of the very same company. He did things in life that we can only dream of, whether playing tennis with the Emperor of Japan, his short stint as a spy for the US government. That story is on an ask and you shall hear basis. Yet along the way, he provided everybody in our family with an overarching umbrella of eternal support. He was the pillar of our family and someone who each one of us always looked up to. Among many more special things, my grandpa was my best friend. Even up until his last days, my grandfather was always interested in what each of us was up to. Whether he was asking me what I planned to do for my career, and I would tell him movies, and he would say, oh, good luck, and or what movies I've been watching, or asking my sister about school, or complimenting her on her outfits, or asking my brother about his work. He always showed a natural and sincere interest in the comings and goings of all of our lives. He would always ask about my friends. How is he doing? What's he up to? You can fill in the blanks if you're curious, whatever. My grandfather was an incredibly caring man. Throughout his life, my grandfather was very passionate about the business of finance and was a businessman through and through. Yet he always embraced and encouraged my passion and interest in the field of creative arts and film. He never cared that I was pursuing a field far different than the norm he was accustomed to, as long as I was realizing my potential, and I credit my grandfather for also inspiring me to take an interest in the business side of film as well as the creative. In fact, I credit my grandpa and grandma for spurring my passion for cinema and the creative arts, as they would always encourage to take me on trips to plays, museums, and most importantly in my case, to the movie theater. My grandma and grandpa had a great appreciation for classical cinema and the great Jewish comedians such as Mel Brooks, Rodney Dangerfield, Don Rickles, and Alan King, and many more. I'm infinitely grateful to him and my grandma for sharing these passions with me and these comedians and movies, as they strongly influence my life and personal passions of my own. Largely as a result of my grandpa's own doing, I've played a lot of golf in my 25 years on Earth, and tennis as well. But something that stood out to me as being quite special is that I can probably count on less than one hand the amount of rounds of golf I've played without my grandfather and my brother. Playing golf with Grandpa always started with a 30 or so minute car ride to the course, complemented with a nonstop shuffle of Frank Sinatra songs. It's actually, people have said that they haven't seen my grandpa only get angry or something on a rare occasion. The only time he ever got upset with me is when I didn't make the right exit that he preferred to get to the golf course, and he held it over on me for a couple weeks, but he got over it. We'd usually be running late and would not get to spend much time on the driving range before teeing off to practice. I'd get a text from my grandma telling me to make sure Grandpa puts on sunscreen and wears his hat, both of which he'd always refuse. We'd get to the tee box and my grandpa goes out to drive, and before you can blink twice, he's drove a ball solidly down the green and already has another golf ball halfway out of his pocket for a mulligan, just for good measure. And it's funny, I sent a video of my grandpa taking a shot to my friend Daniel Eidman and Dave Eidman last night, who are big golfers. And they noticed that in his swing, reaching to the pocket is part of his follow-through. And it's just interesting. After each nice shot he'd hit, my grandpa would yell out strongly in German, saying, "Wie gehabt," and me and my brother would follow with a "Nicht gesagt." And then he'd say, "You gotta tell David about that shot," or "You gotta tell Dean about that shot." And I'd say, "Yep." Then we'd get to the irons. Grandpa would hit a shot he's not so happy with, and bark out German profanities like Arschloch at me and my brother, and would do his classic quote from On the Waterfront and scream out, "I could have been a contender." He would get upset, but then hit the following shot right on the green and would have a big smile on as he chirps out, "I'm on the green." The first 9 holes would always be followed up by a lunch between me, my brother Benjamin, my grandpa, and whichever friend of his we were playing with on that given day, although it was usually Jerry, who wasn't such a fan of my grandpa's lack of golf etiquette. He always would say, "Don't walk over my line, Bill." I kid you not, each of these golf outings was straight out of a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode, only with a bit more on the wholesome side. Over 99% of my time spent on a golf course has been while playing with my grandpa and my brother, and I'm lucky to have the golf course as a place that I can now always go to and know that I'll be connecting with him up there or wherever he is in a metaphysical sense. I know I speak for all of the grandkids when I say that we have all shared truly impactful and amazing times with Grandpa in Boca, Disney, Israel, the Hamptons, and especially in New York City. We're all gonna really miss spending Thanksgiving with you, Grandpa. Those nights we'd spent watching the balloons being filled with Eva Rose, myself, my brother, and Rosie when she got a little older, and the rest of the cousins are memories I'm incredibly fond of. Some of my earliest memories in life are the Sunday morning drives my grandpa would take me and my brother on when we were very little kids through the Hamptons countryside in his old Porsche. We would drive aimlessly as we admired the agricultural beauty of the countryside and usually end up at the general store to pick up his newspapers, and we'd get some chocolate milk, and then we'd finish at the Candy Kitchen for some fresh homemade ice cream and grilled cheese. My grandpa knew how to enjoy the simple things in life, and this is something I will always take with me. And the great amount of time I was truly privileged to spend with him. My grandpa taught me many valuable life lessons. Examples of such are being ambitious, yet also modest, being optimistic in the face of conflict. There's no such thing as a free lunch. The importance of family, the benefits of traveling and seeing all that the world has to offer, the game of golf, which in his case meant ignore all aspects of proper golf etiquette and just hit the damn ball and enjoy the weather. He showed me the beauty that resides within a vintage Porsche and the value of not taking life too seriously and always staying in touch with the kid inside of all of us. I love you, Grandpa, and I'll miss you. Think of you forever. Thank you all for coming.
It's difficult to add to the beautiful words that we've just heard, but maybe I can just try to put a frame around them. In many ways, Bill's life followed the pattern of the exodus that we're now reading about in these parshios. From impending doom in Germany in 1939, Bill escaped, as you know, with his mother at the age of 4 like his ancestors in Egypt, he began with nothing. But in time, he built a family and a career and dedicated himself to the service of Hashem and the service of the Jewish people. So I wanted to return just for a moment to the first mitzvos that we received as a people at the doorstep to the Exodus, to three motifs, three central themes that in a small way speak to who Bill was and the life that he led. The first theme is Shmira. It's our job, the Torah says, to guard the Korban Pesach, to guard the matzah. Seder night is Leil Shimurim. Ushmartem es hamatzos, as Rashi reminds us, it's our job to guard and keep every one of Hashem's mitzvos. And that was Bill. Very quietly, he was a model of personal piety. It wasn't just Shabbos and Yontif. He took his Judaism very seriously, from finding kosher food in far-flung locations to davening and benching. He excelled in tzedakah and chesed, and he particularly excelled in the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em. Bill would do anything for his beloved mother. As you know, they had a hard-scrabble life as immigrants to Washington Heights. One of his mom's first jobs in this country, as Jonathan mentioned, was working for a family at the Beresford. Bill and his mom would come as guests to their Pesach Seder. About 40 years later, Bill bought an apartment in that very same iconic Emery Roth building, and when he told his mother, she was ecstatic. It was like unbelievable. He promised her that now they would be spending Pesach in the Beresford not as guests, but as hosts. Bill's mom passed away a few months before Pesach that year. But Bill was so intent on honoring his promise to his mother with just some makeshift furniture in an unrenovated apartment, Bill and Radine made Pesach in the Beresford. Second, the thing about the mitzvah of Korban Pesach is that it can't be accomplished by one person. It takes a chabura, it takes a group, it takes a community, selabes avos selabais. Some people you meet in life who think about service to the Jewish community as part of their responsibility. They know they're supposed to contribute, and they know they're supposed to volunteer, and they get up and they do it, and it's beautiful, it's great. Then there are people you meet in life who think about service to the Jewish community as part of their identity. Bill Spier was such a person. The notion of tzibur coursed through his veins. Wherever he went, he built up Jewish institutions. I think I first got to know the Spiers when the family was dedicating the stained glass window in the sanctuary of the Jewish Center. The theme of the window is the 6 days of creation, and it's such an apt metaphor because Bill was a creator, a builder at his core. For longer than I can remember, he was a trustee at the Jewish Center. Whenever I bumped into him at a simcha or just about town, his first question was always, "Rabbi, tell me how things are going at the shul." I want to acknowledge the presence of Mori Varabi, Rabbi Dr. Ari Berman, the president of Yeshiva University. Rabbi Berman had such a warm and close relationship and friendship with Bill and Radine that long outlasted the years they were together at the Jewish Center. And I want to acknowledge my friend and colleague, Rabbi Yaakov Gibber. Of course, we spoke last night. I know how much he wanted to be here in person, but he made me his shaliach. He told me that yesterday, when he was speaking at his shul, the Boca Jewish Center, he said at every one of his minyanim, he told every one of his members, you have to know that you're only here today. You're only sitting in this room because of a man named Bill Spier. Bill would have said it's all because of Radine, but that's another story. The RJC, the SAR, Shari Tzedek, the list goes on and on. Selabes avos selabayis, the first mitzvah in the Torah was about making sure that every other Jew was cared for Bill. It wasn't just an obligation, it was an ethos. Lastly, the Torah tells us that it's not enough to keep the mitzvah of Korban Pesach. It's not enough to keep any mitzvah. You got to Lebincha, you also have to teach your kids about the mitzvahs. There's a Masorah, there's a tradition, and you have to make sure that it endures. Both implicitly and explicitly, Bill taught his kids what Jewish life and what Jewish service were all about. As Radine said to me, there was really nothing more important to Bill than a Shem Tov, which he righteously earned and richly deserved. As he said, it's what you achieve by doing the right thing. But what makes a Shem Tov last is when it redounds to the next generation. Bill was a dedicated son, a loving husband, a devoted brother to his half-sister, a doting father and grandfather, the consummate Jewish communal leader. And you don't have to look very far to see how the values he modeled have come to life in the next generation. Jonathan and Susie, Evan and Malka, Debbie and Bruce, Razi and Ami, David and Daniela, and 11 grandchildren. What a legacy you've inherited. Bill was so self-effacing, he never forgot his roots. He rose to the heights of professional success. He traveled the world and played tennis with, I want to say the Crown Prince, because I think at the time he was still the Crown Prince of Japan. He went on to be the emperor, but that's okay. He built an international business and met titans of industry. He was an NBA owner and the financial backer behind an Oscar-winning Hollywood film. But he always remembered his humble beginnings. From an orphanage to foster care to jobs, shining shoes, and working as a delivery boy, he remembered his past and he wanted to make sure his kids and grandkids did too. Let me share Bill's words. He said, Radine and I have carefully invested through the years in our children's Jewish education. We have planted the seeds for each of them to have a life steeped in traditional observance, but it's up to them. It's up to them to maintain this important link to the past generations as they build their futures. I certainly hope they will maintain the values that I hold to be so important. Bill, all I can say is, with you as their model, I think it's a pretty good bet. Let me add a final word. The story of the Exodus is the story of a 40-year journey. Bill and Radine, as you heard, just celebrated their 39th wedding anniversary. They met in May 1981. So I think it would be safe to say that it was a 40-year journey too. And I think it would be safe to say that each of them considered every day of that journey a day in the promised land. Radine, you and Bill were an amazing team. For the better part of 40 years, and particularly in these past months, you were a paragon of devotion. There's nothing you didn't do for Bill, and I think you knew there was nothing he wouldn't do for you. May Bill's extraordinary story and extraordinary life continue to inspire us all. May the soul of Bill Spier be bound in the bonds of eternal life.
Following our service here, the interment will take place at Bethel Cedar Park Cemetery in Paramus. For those watching online, it will be broadcast in the very same Zoom webinar that we are on right now. Shiva will take place this week through Friday afternoon. Many details of the Shiva are being distributed by the various shuls, of course, here locally. Shiva is being observed at 35 Lexington Court. There are in-person outdoor hours. There are Zoom Shiva hours. Again, all this is being distributed accordingly. Please rise as we conclude with the Kel Maleh. El Maleh Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamitzei Menucha Nechona Al Kanfei HaShechina B'Malos Kedoshim Taharim Kizor Harakia Mazirim Es Nishmas Pinchas Ben Yosef Rezo Sheholach Liolamo Bavor Shanachnu Mispalim Ad Haskaras Nishmaso Began Eden Tehei Menuchaso Lochein Bal Harachamim Yasdirehu B'Seser Kinafav Liolamim Vitzror Vitzora Chaim Es Nishmaso Adonai Hu Nachaloso V'Yanuach B'Shalom Ishkavo V'Nomar Amen. All right, this concludes our service here. We'll now form a procession and make our way to the cemetery. Well, we're going to continue now with the Kvura. As many of you know, the mitzvah of Kuras Hametz, bringing someone to Kuras Yisrael, is a chesed shalemes. It's a kindness that cannot be repaid. And so therefore, we do every aspect of the mitzvah ourselves that we can. And so that's why we'll be filling in the grave ourselves. But at the same time, we do it with a great deal of hesitancy and sadness because of how difficult it is to say goodbye, which is why we have the customs of not to do this burial in any efficient manner whatsoever. We don't hand the shovel one person to the next. The first few shovelfuls we do with the back of the shovel, which is just another reflection of our sadness and our hesitancy. So I'll begin, and then I'll invite the family to continue after me. try to keep walking straight.
Keep going straight, guys.
I'll be reciting the Tziduk Hadin, which is our expression of faith in the Kadosh Baruch Hu, even at our most difficult of times. Hatzur tamim palo ki chol drachav mishpat elamonav einavel tzadik v'yashar hu. Hatzur tamim b'chol pal mal yomar lo matifal hashalip b'mato v'mal mimisu mechayeh morid sha'ov v'yoal. Hatzur tamim b'chol ma'aseh v'yomar lo mataseh homer v'oseh chesed chinam lanu sa'aseh u'v'tzchus haneka keseh hakshiva v'aseh. Tzadik b'chol drachav hatzur tamim erech apayim v'lei rachamim chamol no v'chus na'lavos uvanim. Ki lecha Adon slichos v'harachamim, tzadik ato Adonai lamis ulachayos, asher b'yadcha bigdom kol ruchos, chalila lecha zichronin limchos, v'yuno einecha barachamim oleno fikuchos, ki lecha Adon rachamim aslichos, Adam im ben shana yiyeh, or alav shanim yichyeh, ma yisron lo kelo haya yiyeh, baruch dayan ha'emes v'emisu mechayeh, baruch hu ki emes dino, u'meshotet hakol ve'no, Unshalem ledam cheshbon ovedino v'hakol lishmo hodaya yitenu. Yodanu Adonai ki tzedek mishpatecha titzdak v'dovrecha v'siske v'shoftecha v'hein lahar herachar midas shoftecha. Tzadik ato Adonai v'yashar mishpatecha. Dayan emes shofet tzedek v'emes. Baruch dayan emes shekol mishpatav tzedek v'emes. Nefesh kol chai v'yadecha. Tzedek mal'a yamincha v'yadecha. Rachem al pleitas etzon yodecha, v'somar lamalach heref yodecha, Gedol ha'itzav rav haliliyah, asher enecha fichu hosa kol darchei b'nei adam, l'seis l'ish kidracha v'chifri yimal olav, l'hagid ki yashar Adonai tzuriv, lov l'sabo, Adonai nasan, v'Adonai lokach, Yishem Adonai mevorach, v'hu rachum yicha peravon v'le'ashchis, v'yirbal hashiva po v'le'yir kol chamaso. All right, at this time the family will say the burial kaddish. Amen. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach Elam Omei Olmaya. Amen. 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 That's now my honor to call upon Rabbi Dr. Ari Berman, President of Yeshiva University, for Tehillim and Kel Maleh.
Mizmor David, Adonai Rui Lo Echsa, Benos Desher Yabiteni Yomei Menuchos Yinhaleni. Nafshi Yeshovei V'yancheni B'magle Tzedek L'man Shemo, Gam Ki Elech V'geit Salmoves Lo Yirara, Ki Ata Imadi. Shiftecha Umishantecha, Hema Yenachamuni. Taroch Lefanai Shulcha Neged Tzorai, Deshanta Bashemen Roshi Kosi Levayah, Achto V'chesed Yirdefuni Kol Yemei Chayai, V'shachti B'beis Adonai, Liorach Yamim. You have all brought Bill enormous joy in his life. You have given him great honor in his passing, and you will further his legacy by living in his footsteps and in his spirit in your future. It's a hard, hard day for all of us who love this man so dearly. Amalei Rachamim, Shochen Bamrovim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Al Kanfei Hashchina, V'malos Kedoshim Utarim, Kezohar Akiyam Azirim, Es Nishmas Pinchas Ben Yosef Berezo, Shahalach Li'olamo, Bavor Shenod B'mtzedaka Bad Haskaras Nishmaso, B'gan Eden Tehei Menuchaso, Lachein Balarachamim Yastirei B'seisher Knafav Li'olamim, V'yitzror B'tzorach Hayim Es Nishmaso, Adonai Hu Nachalaso, V'yanuach Al Mishkavo B'Shalom, V'nomar Amen.
Mr. Bill Spier, Pinchas Ben Yosef Arezel, Lech L'Shalom, V'sanuach V'Shalom, V'sa'amo L'gor Alecha L'Ketz Hayamin. Go in peace. May your repose be in peace. And may you arise to your ultimate destiny at the end of days. We conclude the Kvura service by asking all those aside from the immediate Avelim to please form two rows along this path here away from the grave. The Avelim will walk through and we will offer them our first expressions of comfort, the Hamakom Yenachem.